Gosh damn it, David. I had a really good idea for my story last night while I was going to sleep, but then I lost it by the morning, and I, for the life of me, don't remember what it was.
Oh, man, that's terrible, Donald. I mean, why would you say gosh, but still say damn it?
Because I'm a nice man who writes dinosaur stories and loves the Lord. You're missing the point, David. My idea is gone, and I don't know if I'll ever get it back.
Well, that's too bad. Looks like it's truly gone. There's nothing we can do.
Really? No sponsored product this week that solves this exact problem?
Nope, none that I can think of.
Come on, of course there is.
Sorry, there isn't. Not this week.
Oh, I know what you're doing, David. You're doing that thing we sometimes do, where you're like, oh, wait a second, there is! And then the ragtime music starts and we proceed as normal. It's a very funny bit. It gets a laugh every time. So come on, say it. Say it. I want this idea back.
I don't know what to tell you, Donald. There's nothing this week.
Really? Nothing?
Nothing.
God damn it.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Ritwit, the show unafraid to ask the important questions like, why are these two twits making a podcast? But also having the gumption to answer, because we are better than you! And expect that to sit well with our listeners.
I think they do. I think they listen to this podcast like, oh yeah, I can't argue with that. These guys are better than me.
He's got a point.
Yeah, that exact way, you know.
In that exact tone of voice. We're back with this. We're back, listeners, doing the pre-planning stuff. So all the stuff you really should get to before you get to writing the first draft.
Yeah, like don't rush into it. Don't be frenetic about it. You would say.
And speaking of which, the vocabulary vitamin of the month is frenetic.
Yeah.
Frenetic. The simple definition: uncontrollably active, almost manic.
That's me every damn day.
A sample sentence: his pace got so frenetic that the workspace seemed it would come apart with the extra energy.
Whoa!
Pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Now go out there and take your vitamin, listeners. Until next set,
It's
if
like
you
when-
have excerpts where you're using the vocabulary vitamin you'd like us to read on the air, please let us know. We will tell you how to get in touch with us at the end of the episode.
I have an excerpt for using this. It's called Life. I'm frenetic all the time. I'm like when antiprotons fuse with regular protons and create, boom, antimatter explosions. So I'm no physicist.
Yeah, obviously. I was,
I'm no physician.
oh man, what was the, in Power Rangers, they had a hand wave thing where they talked about negative protons. That's like the...
Isn't that antiprotons? I love it when people say reverse the polarity, too. That's just one of those things that people don't know what it means. It's like we gotta press the switch to reverse the polarity.
Hydrogen atoms walk into a bar, and one says to the other, I think I lost an electron. And the first says, are you sure? And the second one says, yeah, I'm positive.
Yes. I was going to say, like, hydrogen atoms have one proton, one electron, right?
Yeah.
So if they lost the electron, like,
yeah,
that's,
they'd be
that's their only
positive.
one.
HBH plus, yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyway, enough about dad jokes and polarity and frenetic.
here's some periodic table jokes. What doctors do with a patient? There are three options. They cure him, they heal him, or they bury him.
I remember that.
Okay.
Anyways.
All right. So after you've come up with the initial concept and way to hook your readers, it's time to think about your protagonist, the central character your readers will be following through this journey. Sometimes this is intrinsically linked to the setting or the plot, but not always. What are some things to initially think about when coming up with your lead character?
It's boring to answer a question with another unless you like just antagonizing people. But here, the most appropriate thought to start building a character is, what kinds have you written before?
Ah, yes.
Not even for the diversity representation angle, but more as a way to differentiate your type.
I definitely, am trying to do this more, so.
There's nothing that compares to being a bit predictable because your characters all resemble each other.
How many of Stephen King's main characters are writers in Maine?
While, obviously, we're only capable of writing what we know through our situation or research, it stands to reason that you want to make your leads different enough that the names don't run together in your own head.
Yes.
The second question is, why am I choosing characteristic X for this lead? That answer could be plot-derived, situation-derived, setting-derived, whatever. But as my vocal professor once told me, have a reason for everything you do.
Yeah, I hope there's a reason for everything to do, not descend to full anarchy. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with like what kinds have you written before. Like it really depends on whether or not you're an experienced writer or someone more new. For instance,
Yeah.
I've written a lot of stories with male main characters since I'm male myself, of course. And my plan for my next big story after Tesla Nuts had to have a female main character. Different. That's more of a different. It's not quite the siren that's like whatever. It's definitely just full Tim Allen there.
Anyways, so a female main character.
Yes.
I think we've talked about the troubles of writing the opposite gender as stuff. I think we had a guest co-host for that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Christina Franklin.
So if you're curious to hear more about that exact thing,
I
we
think it's
do
episode
have an
28 of the Ritwit.
And if it's wrong, ding.
I only know this because I just recently that was one of the episodes that had the Christmas song. That I had done.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah,
And we just released a Christmas in July set for the Ritwit.
Yeah,
So go listen to that on the
Christmas,
Patreon.
I was about to say not for the Ritwit, but for the Patreon. So go check.
Okay.
But yeah, female main character. I mean, obviously, you're equipped with the information you have, so you're gonna have to do a lot of research. Which I mean, you've got 3 sisters,
and
so
I've
you could
also
ask them.
I've got a lot of friends that are girls. Like
That's
again,
true.
it comes from the fact that I have 3 sisters. I'm more comfortable around girls than guys actually usually. So
I wish I had that problem, but I don't have 3 sisters. I have 1. So,
and you didn't even grow up with that sister.
and she's way younger than me. So
Yeah.
anyway,
but
female main character, interesting.
Thank
choice.
you.
Go for it.
And also, the few times I've written about humans, they tend to be about white humans, since, again, I'm white. But I also plan to be more diverse in my writing career to go on to challenge myself to do research and probably portray and respect the lives of other ethnicities.
To reference last week, what about that Thai beetle story? They weren't white.
I guess that's
were
true.
they?
I tend to, is what I say. No,
Anyway.
they were definitely Thai.
For more on that, go check out last week's episode 136.
Yes.
You don't have to ding that. It's not worth it.
No, there's too
Anyway.
many already. All right. So, but other than the more broad what your character is sort of thing,
Yeah.
it's also another thing to think about who your character is. Like, my main characters tend to be nice but awkward guys who give it their all even though they're out of their league. I wonder where they get that from.
Ah.
But maybe next time I could write a story about a guy who's a total insufferable asshole, except they're right all the time. That could be fun.
Well, and something I think you glossed over this, so I'm just going to make sure it's covered in case. But the whole, like, if you don't know about this character archetype, if you don't know about this kind of people, that you obviously are obligated to do a bunch of research to make sure you're not falsely portaying them.
Well, we talked
not
about
just
that with our
stereotypical.
inclusive set, which I'm not going to ding too
just
many.
last time ago.
I think it was,
so there
it
you-
was the time.
it was a it was
time
a set
before
this
because
one.
we just did finish the one about serial works.
Oh, okay, that's right. That was right.
So-
It's 2 ago. Anyway, but I mean, there's that. Actually, the out of their league thing. There's one gentleman that I have the pleasure of
God.
singing with, who his wife is a lovely lady, and everybody keeps going up to him and saying, "Yeah, you definitely married up a class," and he's like, "Yep."
Is this guy rich?
Middle class, I suppose, in as far as income.
Well,
goes.
that's rich for my millennial ass. But anyway,
Anyways,
Okay.
sorry, enough of that tangent. But anyway, how about
all right.
we have another question, I'm sure.
Yes, we do. Could you list a unique way to play with the character before you get to the actual drafting process?
Unique.
Yes.
I try. One challenge of developing a voice in voiceover work is settling on the mannerisms of a character.
Yes.
Try as one might, sometimes our voice doesn't remain consistent. Obviously, the character needs to grow within the scope of this story you're planning. That's not which piece I'm worried about. But before you get to writing them in, it helps to know certain things about them. So I sometimes have a non-canon little conversation with the character.
Those are always fun.
You can play around, ask silly questions, maybe inspire some minor characteristics that later impact the story, or a subplot before you even worry too much about the plot, if you're following our order anyway.
Yes.
It helps establish them in your head as a distinct entity rather than carving the marble starting page 1 to page whatever.
Right. That's true. I've definitely seen like ways to like you can converse with the character. Have you ever seen? There's this movie. I think I might have talked about it before. It's called The Man Who Invented Christmas. I think it's a made-for-TV movie. I don't know. I've never heard of it before recently. I showed it with a friend of mine, and it's about it's a biopic on Charles Dickens, specifically the weeks where he wrote A Christmas Carol. Like it's not about his childhood or his post, whatever. It talks about like how he has these like
Or any of his other works.
Yeah, his other work.
Expectations, Tale of Two Cities.
Yes. Did he write Prince and the Pauper? No, that was Mark Twain.
I I don't know, and I'm not going to be unprofessional and look it up.
Which is the one that he wrote? Okay.
I know he did Great Expectations and he did Tale of Two Cities, but I don't remember.
Oh, Oliver Twist is the one I'm thinking of that's about a
Twist
kid.
Dickens, yes.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, I was thinking, like, what was the one he
Prince
wrote?
and the Pauper, I don't know who did that.
I think that's Mark Twain.
That doesn't sound right, honestly.
Hold on. We need to pad this out.
We're so professional.
Okay. All right.
I'm remembering the time where we welcomed our fellow nerds with a thing about fourth-rate professionalism.
Yes. Well, here we go. Who wrote Prince and the Pauper? Now, I know who wrote The Princess Bride.
I don't.
William Goldman. Mark Twain. Boom. I knew it. Okay. Oh, wow. Someone actually Googled who wrote the 1881 novel, The Prince. If you know the year it came out, surely you know.
Well, there could have been a bunch of writers active at that time. Who are we kidding?
I have no idea when Christmas Carol came out, but I know who wrote it. When did Christmas Carol come out? Okay. What year?
Apparently, he thinks we don't have enough content to fill our regular episode length, and so he's doing this on the air. That's what it is.
December 19th, 1843 is when it was published.
I seem to remember Christmas Carol being published as like a set of things. So like part of it came out in a magazine, and then
that's how a lot of those stories were. I don't think it was. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Maybe I'm thinking Tale of Two Cities.
I think you might be thinking of Tale of Two Cities. But yeah, no, it's because like the whole book, the whole movie was about he had this idea, but it was already I think August or September, and they're like they wanted an idea from him fast because his last few books had been failures, like financially, and so they had this idea, and it's like, well, you can't finish this in the amount of time that we need to print and like illustrate it, get a cover, because this was back before computers, they had to hand do all that, like. And
if you had to erase the thing that you'd written in Quill, well, you're not erasing it, you're rewriting it.
So he spent like all of his time like focusing on like, and there'd be times where he'd talk about the characters and he'd have conversations with the characters, and like he talked to Christopher Plummer, who played Scrooge in this, so. And it was really good. And they talked about like his process of him coming up with it. Because initially it was about like this old man who like gets shown, like, as it is in the sort of thing, like it gets shown like how terrible he was. But then that's that. And then a lot of people point out, but that's not a very satisfying story. What about he has to change from that, right? He has to get better. And he's like, there's no way he could get better. Look at this guy, like there's no. And
it would take some ethereal help to make.
Yeah,
him
exactly. Like, and so he had to come up with like this way to like what could scare him enough for him to change his way. And
put the fear of death in him.
Well, and also originally in the draft, like Tiny Tim died and stayed dead.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he did this whole conversation with the characters. And it was really cool. It's a really good movie.
No, I don't think you've mentioned it before. On the podcast.
Goes into the writing process. It leaves out the convenient fact a lot of people seem to forget. Charles Dickens totally wrote Christmas Carol for the money. That was not one of his most works he spent the most time. I mean, as a good creator would, he did get all into it to making sure it was stuff. But if you asked him what his best works were,
he wouldn't mention it.
He would not mention it. So,
well, and if you're in a place where you have to write for a living, I'm sure that a lot of people get to those parts where they're not always proud of the work they put in, but if they're trying their best, then what does it matter?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And I know if there are a lot of writers,
And trust me, I'm not going to start comparing myself as a writer to Charles Dickens. So
I know you have delusions of grandeur, but
I'm not that grand.
But anyways, so what is it, though, that makes your character appealing? Do they have a gimmick in how they talk or what they do? What is their backstory? What are some quirks they have? What is their family? Again, we like to go back to that handy character document thing that lists a bunch of attributes about your character that often aren't in the story at all, but help you flesh them out.
Or, unfortunately, forgotten to be referenced, and so you forget what they look like.
Right, exactly. But we like to go back to that because it works, dang it.
Yeah, no, it does work. I was going to say, there was one time I had an idea for a Ranger team where all of the Rangers had a different family situation. So like one was an only child, one was the oldest brother, one was the younger sister, one was the only girl in a family of like 7 other kids, something like that. So all of them were different. And then over time, as they bond through this common experience, that they become a different family group. And for some of these people, the first time they've really experienced that.
Wow, I see. Okay.
It was a noble thought, but I never got to writing it.
That is a good thought. And I also like, I'm sure with Power Rangers, like eventually it becomes like your sort of found family sort of thing with like
a lot of it,
yeah,
especially. There's one guy I remember reading on the forum called Ranger Board, and his style was incredible. Like all of his fics, I enjoyed reading the crap out of them. And one of them where they had a distinctly like antagonistic relationship with each other at the beginning, but by the end, it was amazing. And that kind of inspired me with a different series that I wrote. I'll just do the elevator pitch for Alpha, was Power Rangers made by an adult fan for adult fans.
Well, there've been some of those before too, but yes.
Yeah, but anyway.
But still, yeah, that's pretty cool though. But what are some ways you know the concept of your lead character works well with the hook of your story?
All right. If you don't need a massive workaround somewhere.
Yes.
Revision of the character sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Or some incredibly consistent out-of-the-box thinking, they fit the story.
Yes.
But in my typical position as devil's advocate, ding, that reference, showing somebody's growth through situations they don't understand is like character development 101. To bring off-reference favorite author Dean Koontz back into the life of our listeners, this is why he starts with the everyman image.
Yes.
Ordinary people thrust into extraordinary situations produces pressure for them to adapt and thrive or simply falter.
Right.
Because the only thing that creates diamonds is pressure.
That's true.
But it can also create a bunch of coal.
There's also, was it the science? There are so many things you could do you can make diamonds if you crush them hard enough, like peanut butter. People make peanut butter diamonds.
Oh, just like crystallize it. Maybe, I don't know.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But there's a subtle difference between fish out of water and unsuitable character.
Right.
You should be able to feel that difference as you write them.
Yes, that's true, I suppose so.
I mean, if he's constantly like out of the frying pan into the fire, constantly out of his depth, and because he's so out of his depth, you have to find other ways to solve the problem. While it might be creative, it doesn't really bode well for the character.
Well, unless they grow and learn. Like that's kind of what I do for my book, which I'll get to here in a sec. So
yeah.
But is your hook about an oppressive government that the main character has to fight? Then having your character be a strong and charismatic leader works well with it.
Sure.
If is your hook a sci-fi action story, then having your character be a sci-fi action hero works well with it. Then again, sometimes subversive main characters also work well with your hook and are oftentimes part of the hook itself. Like for my first Megazoic book, for instance, Spy on Amazon.com. It's a series that I frequently describe as dinosaurs with laser guns.
Humans and dinosaur feathers or scales with laser guns.
But anyways, the main character, Cortan, though, is actually not a dinosaur with a laser gun.
He's a dinosaur.
He doesn't have a laser gun, though.
Oh, okay.
He's just a dinosaur that's good at hacking and technological skills, while dinosaurs with actual laser guns protect him. That was the hook. And eventually Cortan has to learn to fend on his own as character growth. But basically, find a way for your lead character to be intrinsic to the plot and setting, and they'll work well with the story.
I'm noticing that theme amongst your characters. You already mentioned that concept, but
what?
That they have to fend on their own. But Cortan never fired a gun. The upcoming main character, Teslanauts, never fired a gun going in.
I mean, main character, and by the end, he's firing all kinds of guns.
I know.
In Megazoic, so.
But that's the thing, is that Cortan also experiences that exact same arc. Anyway,
well, it's they're still different. Like
I'm not saying they're the same. One's a dinosaur.
Well,
at
also,
least purportedly.
Which you'll get to when it comes out, he doesn't know anything about technology, though. He's more the son of Cortan, honestly. Which
one
sense.
Came first, the dinosaur or the human? That's an easy question.
The dinosaur. Even if you're one of those religious young Earth people.
Anyway.
The dinosaur came first. Anyway, so obviously you could do this for as many characters as you choose. How do our hosts feel about expanding this, like you and I suppose? What are the maximum number of characters worth doing the prep work before any other decisions are made?
I mean, the only maximum is one that you ascribe for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a fun catchphrase from the show I ripped off of this set was the Red Ranger saying, "Limits exist to be broken."
That's true. That's a good saying.
The longer you spend doing all of this detailed work to prep the characters is longer a wait for planning other vital parts of a story. So maybe you want to keep it to a dull roar. The main protag, the main antag, perhaps the core cast that will make the story happen on the page.
Right.
The traveling troop, faction leaders, etc., and so forth. Obviously, the minimum is 1 if you're doing all of this prep, but a theoretical maximum recommended by me would be 7.
Ah, okay.
As
That's
to
specific.
why? because it's less than 10, more than 5, and sounds reasonable to those people meticulous about planning characters ahead of writing.
Well, if limits are meant to be broken, why not do 70?
Well, I mean, this is the argument. If you have too much fun developing the characters, are you really developing anything else of the story?
I don't know. I think J.K. Rowling...
Obviously, you develop parts of the plot in conjunction with the characters if that's vital to their growth.
Right.
But it's not like you're getting the whole plot figured out.
I think J.K.
It's not like you have the genre done. This is making characters.
I think J.K. Rowling planned this like all different kids for Hogwarts before she started writing too. Like one who would be in which house, like what their quirks would be, how they'd relate. Like I've seen like pictures of like her graphs to it. Now to be fair, that's an extreme example. So
yeah. Well, and how many characters we keep referencing the Wheel of Time because it's legendary for how many characters
1,800 characters.
And, keeping all of them straight, I'm sure he had to do a lot of work.
Well, I'm sure some of them were gay.
Going in. Keeping track of which character's which, then. Because, I mean, we've talked quite a bit in other sets about character work that, you have characters that don't really make an impact. You don't name them. They're there because they have to be, and they add, that importance. They add that feeling of weight to the story. But when you have so many characters, keeping them all separate from each other in your own brain... Sometimes there's a whole lot more that goes into that. And so, obviously, where you set that line is your own choice.
That's true.
You could do 2, the main protag, main antag, and let the rest of the chips fall where they may. You could plan 5 and figure out which characters those are. It's his parents, it's him, it's the enemy, and one other person.
Right. Okay, yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of things you could do. Like,
I mean, there's a lot of variance within this model, but how you decide the 7, how you decide to do the 7D... But all the time that you spend here, you're not spending on other things.
Right.
Is why I'm saying that you probably want to keep it to a duller roar. Now, your skills as a writer, your experience level.
Mm-hmm. It could be that coming out with characters is super easy for you, or coming out with plots is super easy for you, so you can spend more of this time focused on characters.
That's true. It's something we haven't really addressed, is that as your own strengths as a writer mean you might need to spend less time doing one certain aspect of the things that we are going to talk about.
Right, exactly. So, like, what I tend to do is plan a main character, their immediate social circle, the villain, some of the lackeys, and a few select side characters before starting the story. If I have a group of quirky side characters, which I often do, I'll often only plan to have said group in general before writing, and then come up with the individual characters later as I'm writing.
And I think I've mentioned before that even during writing, so much changes from your plans. Like, did I talk about the Pharaon Storm example?
Possibly, but refresh my memory.
So Julian, the one who ends up wearing the black armor, has psychic ability.
Oh, no, you did not talk about this.
But originally it was supposed to be somebody else.
Ah, okay, cool.
So maybe I was trying to record Nerds Are Us.
I was going to say, is that Nerds Are Us?
It might be. But anyway, point being, I had this team. And the way I introduced the characters was doing them bits at a time. And so suddenly I found that because I had an odd number, that one of them was by themselves.
Ah, yes.
So instead of giving a character who was already being introduced with another character in the same episode that thing, I gave it to the one left over.
Right,
which completely changed where I was going to go with it.
Well, that's fun. Like when you change those little details, they end up changing so much, but make the story so much more interesting.
Well, hopefully it does. I mean, hopefully it works. It's not like I'm suddenly going to, change course on it, because now I have to do a ton of rewrites to fit that in.
Right,
but at least it gives some flexibility.
Yes.
And that's something else that we haven't yet mentioned, and is obviously a point that the planning stuff you do before does not change the likelihood that something comes up as you're writing that you think is better.
Well, and like that's the thing. Like, it's good to have a plan, but don't make the plan so rigid.
Don't be so stuck in your plan
that if a wrench gets thrown into it, then and that's kind of what
I didn't realize Ratchet was anywhere near
Hey, I made a bad joke. You're fully allowed to make that bad joke. But like that's the thing that like the Marvel movies do, again, because we love Marvel so much. Like,
I wish we had more to talk about with DC, because I feel really bad giving them short trips.
DC
That's
needs
all I'm saying.
more examples of the
Arrowverse is basically their predominant example.
I need to watch Arrowverse then. So
but for what it's worth, that it's getting to another inflection point, because the old guard is basically done.
Yeah.
And they're starting to try and find new shows to replace.
Well, that's why they have Supergirl and like.
Well, Supergirl's actually ending this season.
Well, okay, who do they got? They got Batwoman.
Batwoman they just recast the character, but yeah.
Okay.
Season 2 there.
All right. Well, whoever they got.
The Flash is ending after this season.
Well,
Arrow's already
Flash-
over.
Yeah, I know Arrow's been long gone.
Legends of Tomorrow is still going, but they came late to the party. Black Lightning is done after this season, but it was relatively short-lived
what's left?
anyway. I think they're making... I don't know, because I haven't watched this far into Arrowverse, but I believe that they introduced enough side characters that they're doing like an Arrow-esque type thing. It'll be a new show.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Kind of a thing. Supergirl is not going to be replaced like to like, but Superman and Lois is a thing right now.
Yeah, I've heard.
So that's all obviously an option. There's talks about other shows coming to the CW that weren't originally from there. Like I think Stargirl is making its way to CW.
Oh, interesting.
So that would obviously be able to
Stargirl
integrate.
different from Starfire?
Yes.
Okay.
Stargirl literally wears like the Star Spangled attire
so
stuff
not
and
like
has,
Stars.
like, Starfire is not
space,
just a
yeah.
space reference. Starfire being one of the predominant like Teen Titans.
Yeah.
And of course Titans as well. DC, that's separate from the Arrowverse, but
I really like the Harley Quinn show, and that's also separate from the Arrowverse.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like there's nothing to talk about, but we just don't know enough between both of us to talk about it.
But
frequently.
anyways,
I feel
Marvel,
bad giving a short shrift.
In
but back to
Marvel, they have their plan, and you can tell that like they have their end goal. But then if something happens, they can figure out a way to fit it in. Like they announced Infinity War Part 1 and 2 back then is what it was called.
Right.
In 2014, they didn't get Spider-Man the rights for him until like March 2015 or February 2015 is when they announced it. I think there was probably a lot of talks. Actually, no. It had to have been before because one of the main things that convinced Sony to share the rights was the big hack, the Sony Pictures hack that happened in December 2014. Thanks to North Korea did it because they had this movie called The Interview that James Franco and Seth Rogen, I think, were doing. That was about like them being drafted to assassinate Kim Jong-un. And so North Korea flipped out as they would and then did this big hack on Sony Pictures and then exposed a lot of emails about like they had no clue what to do with the Amazing Spider-Man sort of thing, and they had a lot of different things. And so anyway,
obviously they didn't.
and they didn't know how to continue it and all this other stuff. And so finally they're like, okay, let's save face, let's share with Marvel. So they had to fit in Spider-Man into their plan. And Spider-Man...
But he came in as early as Civil War with Captain America 3.
I know, and that was only a year after the announcement. They managed to fit that in. And they had like several scripts for Civil War just in case, they could fit Spider-Man in or not Spider-Man. Originally, like Spider-Man was going to have a really big role, and then Black Panther was going to have a small role. And then when they thought that, okay, they're not going to get Spider-Man, they beefed up Black Panther's role. But then turns out they did get Spider-Man, so they made Spider-Man have a minimal role.
Makes sense. Don't overexpose him.
And kept Black Panther's role big. So, but now, like, the way they fit in Spider-Man, like, he is, like, such a big emotional part of Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
Like, they could just fit that in so well and add, like, a new layer to Tony Stark's arc. So.
And obviously the flexibility of going with your gut feeling when those gut feelings have changed from what originally started with is a good quality. But because we're not talking about the drafting process, we're talking about the stuff you do before. It's worth mentioning that your plans right now are not set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
They're written in sand. You can
Yes.
change them. You can wash them out. You can do whatever the heck you
I like
want.
that metaphor. They're not in stone, they're in sand.
And so, for right now, it sounds like a good idea. But if you have to change something, be willing to change something. If you want to change something, of course, you can do it once you get to the drafting process. But I guess the reason I went off on this tangent in the first place is that a lot of the planning that you're doing right now for characters is taking away from other things you could be doing. You're not writing yet.
No, you're not. But just good to have like the specific important ones planned. So.
And how many that number is, it's up to you.
All right. Regardless of which week in our set it comes, again, this is our weekly thing we're saying here, can us twits make an argument for starting with this one first?
When it comes to building any character, the question of why they are important to the audience and the question pertaining to their impact in the story, these are essential to making the character worthwhile.
Right, exactly.
The nice part, should you choose to start with character planning first, is that you can adjust them quite easily to fit other parameters you set yourself with new plans.
Right.
A character concept in itself is arguably more malleable to fit other things rather than tailoring a setting because of the character you planned afterward, for instance.
That's true. That's true.
That's my thought about starting with the lead character. But how far down the rabbit hole you get before addressing anything else, well, that's the trick.
Right. That's true. But I think it depends on the story again, though. But if this is a character-driven work, then yeah, start with this first. Like, the setting and the plot don't matter as much as what happens to the character and how they interact with each other. So planning your main character first can definitely be great.
Yep.
Then again, you'll need to very quickly figure out what your main character is going to actually do.
Yeah, well, that'd be helpful.
Which means you should plan the plot pretty quickly afterwards. For more on that, tune in next week. But until then, that's it for this week.
Yep.
Huge thank you to all our patrons so far, including Alexis R.
Your support is so very much appreciated. If you're looking for more information of how you can get involved and become a patron, support this and Paleo Bites and other content from Donald particularly, go check out. We have a link in the description.
Patreon.com/Matthew Donald.
I keep saying it's in the description.
Well, just in case they don't look. I don't know. Contact us at mattd@MatthewDonaldCareer.com for any general questions to either of us.
Please specify David or Donald if you're going to address one of us in particular. But if you have episode ideas, if you'd like to share those vocab vitamin uses, please let us know. And also let us know if it's okay to share that stuff on the air. We do honor those requests.
Right.
We always appreciate you getting in touch with us and helping us improve the product that we're making here. So speaking of which, wherever you're listening to us from, thank you for rating us, leaving comments, suggesting it to all your friends, checking out the Patreon.
All that stuff.
So it means
rate
so
us
much
on Apple
for us.
Podcasts or wherever you all listen to podcasts, but usually Apple Podcasts. Yeah, if you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at Matthew Donald Career on Facebook, at Matthew Donald 64 on Twitter, and Matthew Donald 64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because that's my BMI. Have I mentioned I'm really, really, really fat?
Good Lord. Somebody at your height to be 64 BMI. Holy mackerel.
I am 5,000 pounds.
I don't think that quite is. That's that high. I don't think it's that high, but I honestly don't know enough.
I don't even think I'm
Considering the number that gets into obesity is already like just 32 or
I was going to say, I don't even think I'm half this.
Then why is 64? Not that, apparently.
Because both of us together are
Oh,
64. Yeah.
At least until tomorrow.
Yeah. Why? What are you going to do tomorrow to lose weight?
Or gain it. Who knows?
Okay. Speaking of
You're
which,
that big.
I know. Yeah. You knew I was going to say.
I knew exactly what you were going to say.
But I'm not going to say it. Let's get something different this week. Anyway, this month. All right. Well, that's it. I'm Matt Donald.
I'm Matt David. Thanks for listening to The Ritwit, the show where us two twits have twitted ourselves out about writting. Until next time, though, keep on writing the good write.
Keep on
writing the good writ.
Keep on writing the good writ.
Oh, that's
Wash your hands. Stay safe. Get a vaccine.
Yeah. Tell your family members you love them because you never know what could happen.
That was ominous. Bye, I guess.
Go do that right now. We'll be back later. Just go do that before you lose the...
We don't know anything that's going to happen.
It's certainly not our fault, is all I'm saying.
It certainly isn't. Whatever happens.
Bye, guys. We'll see you next week. Why would you say gosh, but still say damn it?
Because I'm a nice man who writes dinosaur stories and loves the Lord.